Hi, I'm Armchair Warlord James.
And I'm Armchair Warlord Morgan, and we're from ArmchairWarlords.com.
This is part 4 in our segment on character creation for beginners for the game of Pathfinder. We've gone over the 3 other archetypal character classes for a medieval fantasy game: the fighter, the divine caster, and the utility character. Now we're going to discuss the Arcane Caster. So I'm going to take the role of a GM, and Morgan's going to take the role of a novice player wanting to play an Arcane Caster. Most of the arcane classes can be very complex for new players, so it's important that the GM, who should be more experienced than the players, spend some time with the player, getting them familiar with the ins and outs of arcane casting in general, and make sure that they have a firm grasp of how their character is supposed to behave in the game and the mechanics of how their character works. So I'll start off just by asking Morgan questions. Since he already knows he's playing the role of the Arcane Caster, we'll start from there. So what type of Arcane Caster do you see yourself playing?
So there's 3 Arcane Casters. There's the Wizard, the Sorcerer, and the Bard. Bards are sort of more buffing and illusion and performance type magic. I'm not really interested in that too much. The Sorcerer can do a more limited number of spells, but can throw more of them out per day. And the Wizard can do a more broad range, but can't cast as many as the Sorcerer. So, I mean, we've already got some 3 other fairly specialised classes, so I think I'll take a more general caster, so I'll choose the Wizard.
Okay. So we go to the Wizard section of the core rule book, and the first thing we come to is, after alignment and hit dice, is class skills. So the class skills for a Wizard are Appraise, Craft, Fly, All Knowledge Skills, Linguistics, Profession, and Spellcraft. Alright, the next thing we come to are Weapon and Armor Proficiencies. Now it's important to read this section because Wizards aren't proficient in any groups or classes of weapons and armor. They're only proficient with a very select number of weapons, and that's it. So they have club, dagger, light and heavy crossbows, and quarterstaffs. That's pretty much all they're proficient in using. The next thing is spells, and we're going to discuss spells later on when we get more in depth into that after the equipment section. The next thing is bonus languages. Whatever class that he plays, or whatever race he plays rather, a Wizard can select Draconic as a bonus language if he has a high enough intelligence score. Draconic is the language of magic. It's what all spells, scrolls, spell books, everything, all magic spells are recorded in the Draconic language. And the next thing is Arcane Bond. Wizards in this game can choose between having an item or an object be bonded to them for arcane focus, or they can select a familiar, which is an animal creature that is very close to them and something they use to focus their spells, and it's also like a companion that gives them some additional benefits. Making that choice is up to the individual player. As far as new players are concerned, the Arcane Bond, or the item bond rather, can be much easier to deal with. Familiars add a new aspect of the game where the character has to keep up not only with their own location on the battle map and what they're doing, but also with the position of the familiar, what they're doing, what their abilities are. It's almost like having to keep a whole secondary mini character sheet. So it can be a lot easier for new players to just use the arcane object. So it's not a good idea to make this like a ring or an amulet, because then it uses up that magic item slot. Now, even though you can apply magic properties to bonded item, it's still usually better in the long run to save those slots for when you acquire more powerful magic items to put there. So typically, if you're going to use the item focus, since Wizards aren't very prone to using their weapon in combat anyway, it's a good idea to have it as like your staff.
Alright, so I've jotted that down in my special abilities section on my character sheet, and I've also added what page number so I can quick reference it for later. Okay.
The next thing you come to is cantrips. Just like a cleric can cast his orisons an unlimited number of times per day, Wizards can also cast 0-level spells known as cantrips an unlimited number of times per day. So even though they can only prepare 3 at level 1, they can use those 3 spells as many times as they want. The next thing is Scribe Scroll. Now wizards get a bonus item creation or meta magic feat every 5 levels, and to start off with, that bonus feat is filled by Scribe Scroll, and that decision is made for you, so you have to take it. And the last thing that wizards deal with is spell books. All wizards have to have spell books. This is the tome where they record all the spells that they know. This is the item that they use when they study and prepare the spells that they want to be able to cast in a day, so all wizards have to have them. Now, just as a side note on the topic of spell books, some GMs are sticklers for things like encumbrance. Now, because spell books fill up, and you'll notice probably by the time your wizard reaches 4th or 5th level, you're going to have filled up your initial spell book, and you're going to need a second one. By the time a wizard reaches 20th level, he may be rocking around with 10 or 12 spell books, and if he wants to be able to use all those every single day, he's got to have all of them with him. So if your GM is a stickler for encumbrance, that's something you want to think about as far as finding a way to transport around heavy items, or thinking about how much strength you want to invest in your character so that he can carry heavy loads. If not, then don't worry about it.
Bags of holding.
Bags of holding work. Bags of holding are really good for carrying around a lot of small things like that. So it's something to keep in mind for later on, but not something to worry about as a starting character. So the next thing to decide for a wizard is his race. So Morgan, what race do you see your character playing?
Okay, so the best Arcane Caster races in the core rulebook are probably the Elf, the Gnomes, Humans, and Half-Elves. We've already got a Human, so I think I might go an Elf, because their abilities modifiers complement a wizard really well. Okay.
That's true. Elves do make very good wizards. Gnomes are usually highly selected second choice, especially if your wizard's going to be an illusionist or an enchanter. They do have a lot of benefits, but overall I think elves are a better choice. One, because of their attribute bonuses, and some of their racial traits also complement being a wizard. So we'll find elves in the race section, and we'll fill in all of the relevant elven information. So elves receive a +2 to their dexterity and a +2 to their intelligence, and they take a -2 to their constitution. Now, this is one of the reasons that we were saying elves are good. +2 to dexterity and +2 to intelligence is going to help your wizard avoid getting hit in combat if he does get attacked. And it's also going to increase his spell abilities, since all the wizard spells are based on his intelligence. The -2 to constitution, it hurts, but it's not really as big a deal because, again, wizards are going to be avoiding being hit at all. So if your wizard's getting struck, then your fighter's really not doing what he's supposed to be doing. So the next thing for elves is they're medium-sized, and they have normal speed. Elves also have low light vision, and what this means, it can be a little confusing just reading the initial description, but basically means in things like shadowy illumination or torchlight or dusk or early morning, they can see just as clearly as though they had completely normal lighting conditions. The next thing is Elven Immunities. Elves are immune to magic sleep effects, and they get a +2 bonus on enchantment spells and effects. So elves have very strong minds. They don't require sleep at night, so when you stop to break camp or whatever, the elf doesn't actually have to sleep. He kind of meditates and rests, and that's all he does. The next thing is Elven Magic, and this is one of those things that benefits a wizard in particular. They get a +2 bonus on caster level checks to overcome spell resistance. And this is good when your wizard is casting against a creature who may be resilient to magic. He's going to get a bonus to break through that protection and affect them with his spell anyway. Also, they receive a +2 bonus on spellcraft checks made to identify the properties of magic items. So because elves are really old and they've been around a lot and they've seen a lot of magical things, it's easier for them to spot the properties of magic items. Next thing is Keen Senses. Elves receive a +2 bonus on perception checks. The next thing is Weapon Familiarity. Elves are proficient with longbows, long swords, rapiers, and short bows, and they treat any weapon with the Elven describer in its name as a proficient weapon. that just will increase the wizard's repertoire of weapons if you get to the point where you actually want to pick up and use one. In languages, Elves begin play speaking Common and Elven, and they have a list of bonus languages they can choose from as well. Alright, so we've decided on class and race. The next thing is to generate ability scores. We're going to use the same mechanic we've been using in the previous videos. The point buy system with a 20-point high fantasy pool to choose from. So Morgan, why don't you go over how you're going to spend your points for your attributes.
Alright, well I'll start with the core attribute for a wizard, which is intelligence. So because I've got 20 points to spend, I'm going to throw 10 points straight into intelligence. That will be in addition to my 2 points that I got from my racial bonus. So that's going to put my intelligence up at 18, which is pretty high for a first level character. After that, I'm going to do my dexterity. So I'm an elven wizard, so I want a decent amount of dexterity. I'll drop 5 points into dex, and then once I add the +2 from my racial bonus, that will give me a dex of 16. After that, I'm not too concerned about strength, so I'll not put any points in that, so they'll leave it as the default 10. Constitution. Now, I suffer a -2 because I'm an elf. However, I don't want to be even more penalised for my hit points as a wizard, because wizards already have pretty low hit points. So I want to put at least 2 points into my constitution just to boost that back up to like a level where I'm not going to take any negatives. So I'll put 2 points in my con, and that will raise that up to a 10. After that, my wisdom. I want to put a few points into wisdom because there are still some feats and skills that I want to plan for later, which will benefit from having a decent wisdom, as well as some of my saving throws. So 3 points in wisdom will put it up to a 13, and then my charisma, I don't really have any points left, so I'll just leave that as a 10.
Okay. One of the things to note here too is if you have a high intelligence as a wizard, it's a good idea to flip over to the next page, which is page 17 in the book, and look at the ability modifiers and bonus spells table. Wizards benefit from having a high intelligence by getting the ability to cast bonus spells per day. So for an intelligence of 18, he's going to gain a bonus spell slot in 1st through 4th level. Now, even though he gets the bonus spells in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th level, those don't actually apply to his character until he's leveled up enough to be able to cast spells of that level.
Right, so I've jotted that down in my bonus spells section in the second character sheet.
Alright, so we've chosen his race, class, and ability scores. So the next thing we're going to do is his skills. Wizards start out with a base of 2 plus their intelligence modifier skill ranks. So in this case 6. So we'll talk to Morgan about which skills he wants to use those points on.
Alright, so as a level 1 character, I'm not really going to burn too many points in sort of core character class skills, so I'm going to stick to the core ones I've jotted down here earlier. So the first one I'm going to choose is craft, and I'm going to specialise in craft alchemy. That will allow me to help brew potions and things. The next one I'm going to put a point in is knowledge arcana. As a wizard, it's pretty much my job to know everything about arcane magic and the knowledge of that. And also the other characters we've made, none of them have any of the knowledge arcana, so it's going to be a good complement to our party's knowledge as a whole. On that same sort of vein of thought, I'm going to add knowledge geography, knowledge history, and I'll also throw in knowledge of the planes as well. The next one I'll do is spellcraft. I mean, as a wizard, you want plenty of spellcraft. That's going to help you in many ways.
Yeah, spellcraft is key for wizards, especially if you ever want to get into the realms of creating magic items later on, because spellcraft is a skill that governs item creation, or magic item creation. Yeah,
and because I've got such a high intelligence and I've got the +3 bonus for using a core skill, even as a level 1 character, I'm going to have a +8 to my spellcraft, which is pretty impressive.
Yep. Alright, so the next thing we'll look at are feats. Feats for spellcasters can be complicated, it can be easy. If you want to stick just to the things that are spellcaster only feats, those are your item creation and meta magic feats. Keep in mind when selecting these that a wizard does at every 5th level get a bonus feat from here. So you can use that to either try to maximize all the feats that you can get, or you can use that to get these for free and then fill in other things from the general feat list. So what feats do you think you'd like to pick?
When sticking with the whole, being a wizard, I'm going to pick a sort of meta magic feat. I'm going to be a spellcaster. I may as well dump some feats in my magic and make it bigger and better. So a lot of the meta magic feats will cause your spell to be cast at a higher level. So when you're at level 1, essentially that will rule you out from using a lot of them, except for heightened spell. So I'm going to say heightened spell.
Alright. Heightened spell basically causes any spell that you attach this meta magic descriptor to when you're preparing your spells for the day to be cast as though your character is 1 level higher. So any level dependent benefits of the spell or level dependent factors of the spell are going to be increased by 1 level. It's very good for a 1st level character to have. It can make a huge difference when you're casting. Alright, the next thing we'll go to is equipment. Wizards don't really need a lot of equipment, especially the types of equipment that most other characters need. That being said, if you go to the starting character wealth table and look there, wizards only get an average of 70 gold pieces to start with, so not a big pot of money because they don't have to make a huge number of selections. They're not going to wear armor, their weapon's going to be simple.
Alright, so I've just jotted down what my starting gold is on a piece of scratch paper. Basically, because I don't want to, ruin my brand new character sheet here with a bunch of erasing. I'm just going to start it here, and I'm just going to go down the list of my weapons and armor and equipment, and therefore I can subtract my total as I will.
Okay. Now remember earlier Morgan selected an arcane bond, or an item bond rather, as opposed to a familiar, meaning that his arcane item that he gets to focus his magic spell is given to him for free. So since he's chosen to make that his staff, he gets his weapon for free. And again, wizards aren't going to wear any armor. Even the lightest armor, which is padded armor, has an arcane spell failure chance. I mean, it's only 5%. Some characters will just eat it and go with it and take the risk of having their spell fail, especially with a 5 or 10% chance, because it's not likely that you are going to fail. The problem is that you do slow down the game just a little bit, because every single time you cast a spell you have to stop and make the check. And then there's always the off chance that it'll fail and you've wasted that spell slot for the day, because if the spell fails you still burn it up. So
yeah, and at level 1 that's pretty critical because you don't have very many spells to burn.
Exactly. So we'll go on to his general equipment. He is going to want to take the same basic things that other characters take, like a backpack, a bedroll, and some rations. There are some other choices that wizards may want to invest some money in, especially since they haven't had to spend any on weapons or armor.
Alright, so basically the equipment I'm going to take, which is more sort of focused on sort of a wizard equipment, will be like a scroll case, ink, paper, pouches, vials to keep my sort of alchemy potions in, stuff like that. And I'll need a spell pouch because you need something to put your components in. A sun rod or two, because I don't have very many skills, and being able to create light is pretty critical at some points. Flask of acid, acid always comes in handy for countless reasons. Then I'll throw in more general stuff, so backpack, bedrolls, stuff like that. Maybe a coil of rope.
Okay, so we'll pause for a minute here and let Morgan go ahead and record all of those items and make his purchases and balance out his accounts. Okay, so the next portion we're going to come to is the additional rules section. This is where we go over alignment, age, height, weight, that type of thing. So we'll ask Morgan what type of alignment he thinks he wants to play, whether he's going to be more law-abiding or more out for himself, or whether he's going to be moral or amoral.
Alright, so the other three characters we've made have been pretty much on the vein of good. So we've had, you know, chaotic good, lawful good, neutral good. For this character, I might make him a lawful evil character. He won't necessarily tell the other players, but he won't act out and be just crazy and, you know, bloodthirsty and evil. He's going to be sort of the quiet, out for himself type of evil.
Okay. Lawful evil characters tend to be your contract makers. They it's one like corrupt lawyers and judges and that style of like a dirty politician type character who's out for himself, but he has a very strict code of behavior that he follows, and he won't just one-timely engage in, you know, acts of destruction or murder or that type of thing. I mean, he's not above killing someone if it serves his own ends, but he's more likely to do it in a very secretive way so that he gets away with it. So a lawful evil character is, if you're going to mix alignments in a party like that, lawful evil is good because, like he said, he doesn't necessarily have to tell the other players that he is lawful evil, and as long as his behavior doesn't betray him, then he can keep that bruise up and still play his alignment honestly. So yeah, that's a unique and good alignment choice. So for age, height, and weight, we'll generate all these things randomly the same way we've done with the previous videos. So we'll pause for a minute and let Morgan do that. Alright, so we've gone through the basic steps of character creation, and now we've come to the magic portion. Magic for wizards is probably the most complex magic in the game, so wizards have several choices they have to make between choosing a bonded object and a familiar, between specializing and not specializing, and then they have the monumental task of deciding which spells they want their character to have written in his spellbook for him to prepare on a day-to-day basis. So the first major question is whether or not to specialize. Now, specialization in Pathfinder is different than the original D20 system. For each school of magic, there are a set of powers that the wizard acquires if he chooses to specialize in that school. Also, instead of having the table of specific prohibited schools based on the chosen specialized school, in Pathfinder, the wizard chooses which school he wants to specialize in and then chooses any two other schools to be his prohibited schools. And it's not to say that he can't cast spells from those, but if he chooses to cast spells from his prohibited schools, he does so with some penalties. So deciding whether or not to specialize is a major decision, because if you do specialize, it will decrease the large casting, universal style casting pool that a wizard has. But at the same time, if your wizard is going to behave in the game in a very specific way, specializing can make him very powerful at what he really wants to do. So we'll ask Morgan what he wants his character to do, whether he wants to be slightly less powerful but still have a broad range of spells, or the broadest possible range of spells, or if he wants to specialize in one particular type of spell casting.
Well, basically, another way to think of specializing is, yes, I want to be a very broad spellcaster, but there's probably a set of spells that I am not really interested in casting anyway. So if you choose to specialize, you can then just go through and select what schools of spells you actually don't like and you probably aren't going to cast anyway, and just choose those. I mean, as you said before, you can still cast them if you want to, and you do it at negative. So, yeah, so once you get to higher levels, I mean, it's not going to be too burdensome to take those penalties. Okay. So it should be fun.
Alright, given that, which school do you think you'd want your character to specialize in? What type of spells do you see him casting most, and which type of spells do you see him not using much at all?
I mean, the spells I like throwing out the most are things like Fireball, so I'm going to choose Evocation. So okay. I'll be an Evoker as my specialised skill. And then the spells I'm not too interested in is Illusion and Enchantment. Okay. So I'll choose those.
Alright, Evocation as a school is based around using energy in an offensive way. So it's creating balls of fire, it's creating walls of ice. Anything that the wizard does that uses a vast amount of energy to generate damage or to create potential sources of damage. Some of the other things that fall under the evocation school are things like floating discs, things that use force and energy in very specific ways. As far as illusion and enchantment goes, illusion spells, it's pretty self-explanatory. It creates things that aren't real but that appear real. And enchantment schools are all about controlling creatures' minds. And one reason a lot of wizards don't necessarily worry about enchantment is because your bread and butter type enemies are undead creatures, and undead creatures are immune to mind affecting things. So a lot of wizards will choose enchantment as a prohibited school just because it doesn't apply to what is considered probably a very large swath of the enemies that you're going to come across. The other schools, just as a quick reference, Abjuration is more about using force and energy to defend yourself or defend others. It's creating shields or absorbing type fields. Conjuration is about summoning things up from nothing, or from another place. So you're summoning creatures from another plane to fight on your behalf. Divination. Divination is about seeing the future, or about any type of clairvoyance or precognition. Necromancy is about controlling the dead and the undead. These are spells that you can use to take control of an undead creature and make him do your will, or create an undead creature from a dead body. And it's also got some crippling status effect spells that can cause fear and panic, or that can reduce a creature's ability scores. And lastly, Transmutation is about changing the world around you. These are your more fantastical wizard type spells, like making someone larger or smaller, animating a rope, or being able to jump across a chasm or something like that. Things that alter the laws of physics, so to speak. The Universalist school, if you choose not to specialize, you do get a couple of powers from that that can be handy. And also, again, you don't have to worry about any penalties from any of the prohibited schools, but you forego the benefits of being specialized in one school. So he's chosen Evocation. One of the things that you get from that is the Intense Spells ability. Basically, every time he casts a spell that will deal damage from the Evocation school, he can add half of his level to that damage roll. Keep in mind that you can't apply this to each individual ray or each individual missile or each individual any type of spell that creates multiple damaging items. It only applies to the total damage of the spell. And the next thing he gets is a spell that he can use a number of times per day without taking up a slot, which is Force Missile. Force Missile works pretty much the same way that Magic Missile does. The only difference is it's only a single missile, and he does get to add the damage from the Intense Spells power to that as well. The other benefit of specializing is that he gets one free additional spell slot per day where he can prepare a spell from his specialized school. So it's one free evocation spell that he can cast each day. Alright, so having gone over that, the next thing we'll discuss is learning new spells. Wizards have a spell book, and in that book they record all the spells that they know, and obviously they can add more spells to that. There are several ways that can happen. One of them is that every time they level up in Pathfinder, a wizard gets 2 free spells of up to the highest level that he can cast, that he can add to his book for free. The other way is if a wizard comes across in the course of his adventuring a scroll or another wizard's spell book, he can use his Spellcraft skill to try to copy the spell that he's looking at into his own spell book and learn it himself. There are some costs that go along with that. He has to spend a set amount of time researching the spell and seeing if he can learn it, and he also has to spend some gold and materials recording the spell in a magical way into his book. And again, keep in mind, if you're playing with a GM who's a stickler for encumbrances and stuff, your spell books are going to fill up quick. Especially as you get higher in level, where spells take up 8 or 9 pages each. You'll burn up a 100-page spell book pretty quickly. So the next thing we'll do is spell selection. So we'll talk about the fact that Morgan starts off play knowing every 0-level spell. They're all recorded in his book, and a minimum of 3 first-level spells, and he also, because of his high intelligence, gets to choose 4 additional first-level spells that he can know. Now, keep in mind that these are the only spells that he can cast. So once he picks these and records them in his book, every day when he's preparing spells, these are the only ones he can choose from. So it's a good idea to have some diversity in the spell book, but also to make sure you have all the spells that you want to be able to use on a regular basis. So because he's an evoker, he's probably going to want to take all the evocation spells. That's
Alright, so the evocation spells that stay in the book are
Burning Hands, Floating Disc, Magic Missile, and Shocking Grasp.
Alright, in addition to those, I might take Featherfall. That's always really handy, especially at lower levels. I mean, I've lost count of how many characters have taken damage or died or almost died from essentially falling. So Featherfall is a good one. Mage Armor, because I'm not wearing any armor. I mean, if we're going through a sort of combat-heavy dungeon crawl, you want a bit of magic armor to help you out. And last one is Obscuring Mist. If everything goes wrong, lay down Obscuring Mist and see if you can bug out.
Good choices, and also know that none of these were from his prohibited schools. Not that he couldn't take spells from those schools if he wanted to, but when you're making your initial selections, you want to use the spells that you think you're going to use most often. So those are the spells that he'll be able to choose to prepare every single morning. I think with the abilities and stuff that he's gotten so far, he's going to have a choice of about 3 spells from that list he can cast every day. And as far as the 0 level spells are concerned, they're all in his book, so all he has to do is select 3 each morning that he wants to be able to cast. And keep in mind that, like Orison's, cantrips can be cast over and over and over again, so once he makes those 3 selections, he can cast them all day long, and he can change them every single time he prepares new spells for the day. Yeah,
a common 3 I choose for the level 0 cantrips are Mage Hand, Ray of Frost, and Disrupt Undead. Especially Mage Hand. Mage Hand is a really good utility spell you can use.
Yeah, Mage Hand basically allows a wizard to reach out and affect his environment telekinetically on objects that weigh up to 5 pounds. Yeah, it sounds limited, but at the same time, if you think about it, I mean, you can Mage Hand a grappling hook high up onto a wall, so you don't have to stand there and try to throw it up and hook what you want. Or you can reach out and unlock a door from a distance, or put out a torch or something like that.
Tripping traps is a favourite one. Like once the rogue has found a trap and it's beyond his means, everyone can gather back and the mage can send out a Mage Hand and trip the trap.
Yeah, also extremely useful in dungeons. Alright, so the last thing that we'll go over with magic is magic item creation. Wizards start off with the Scribe Scroll feat, and a lot of wizards will take item creation feats as they level up. The item creation system is a bit different in Pathfinder than it is in traditional D20. It's just a measure of time and money. You also have to be able to cast the spells that are required to create the specific item that you want. So when you're scribing scrolls as a first level character, you're going to be limited to only being able to scribe scrolls for spells that you know. That can be useful though, especially as a low level character when you've run out of your daily allotment of spells, which is going to be more common than you might imagine. You'll have those scrolls to be able to pull out and say, I can cast this spell again and again as long as I have scrolls for it. Also, a lot of wizards will spend their camp time, especially elven wizards who don't have to sleep, will spend their time resting, scribing new scrolls. It's just a very common activity. Alright, so this has been part 4 of our series on basic character creation for Pathfinder. We've gone over the 4 major archetypes for any medieval fantasy game, which is the combat character, the utility character, the divine caster, and the arcane caster. We did a fighter in the first video, we did a cleric in the second one, a rogue in the third one, and this one has been a wizard. Once this party is created and ready to go, you should be able to tackle any kind of adventure or any type of campaign path with a party like this. In future videos, we'll go over how to actually utilize these characters in a game and some basic gameplay tips and advice, and also we'll run you through some example game sessions and give you some ideas of how to use these characters once you've created them. If you like this video, be sure to hit like down at the bottom and subscribe to our channel so we know what types of videos people like the most so we can make more of those. And also leave us some feedback. We're more than happy to respond to that, and we do pay attention. Also, you can find us on Twitter at AC Warlords or on Facebook at Armchair Warlords LLC. And I'm Armchair Warlord James.
I'm Armchair Warlord Mode.
And we're from ArmchairWarlords.com. Thanks for watching.